National flights to resume at Enugu, Port Harcourt and Kano airports. Afri-Exim Bank and others unveil $1.5 billion facility to support food production. Central Bank of Nigeria and Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation set to establish fund to rescue struggling banks. And on Business Express today, we'll be taking a look at moves to stabilize the country's financial sector towards economic recovery and growth. The program is, of course, Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Moplang Dakok. So glad to have you always tuned to Business Express. Statisticians have re-echoed governance and security statistics as fundamental to ensuring the relationship between the state and the people is inclusive, transparent, and accountable. This is because they are useful for monitoring the performance of government and understanding the contribution of governance.
When used as early warning system, the data can help to foster peace by regularly providing information on the status of state-society relations, which lie at the center of sustainable peace.
Sustained peace remains the only panacea for meaningful growth and economic development.
The theme for this year's African Statistics Day is modernizing national statistical systems to provide data and statistics to support sustainable peace and development in Africa. Now, Export-Import Bank Afri-Exim has released the Afri-Exim African Commodity Index ACCI for the third quarter of 2020, where the composite index fell marginally by 1% quarter-on-quarter, mainly on account of a pullback in the energy sub-index. In comparison, the agricultural commodities sub-index rose to become the top performer in the quarter, outstripping gains in base and precious metals. The AACI is a trade weight index designed to track the price performance of 13 different commodities of interest to Africa and the bank on a quarterly basis. The energy sub-index fell by 8% due largely to a sharp drop in oil prices. The agricultural commodity sub-index rose 13%. Base metal sub-index rose 9%, while precious metal sub-index, the best performer yet to date, rose 7% in the quarter. Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, has cautioned Gambia's finance policymakers not to embark on Nigeria's public finance management reforms without the devotion of topmost political leadership. She was speaking at the signing of Memorandum of Understanding between both countries that will see Nigeria provide 5 years technical support on Treasury single account for the Gambia. Leah Katung Babatunde completes the story.
It's been 15 years since the implementation of the Treasury Single Account TSA, a critical component of Nigeria's finance management reforms, which has seen the federal government save 45 million naira monthly in interest payments. This is in addition to other benefits, both in fiscal and monetary terms. This feat saw the Gambia embark on a study tour of Nigeria last year. Now agreements have been concluded and teams of experts will engage in exchange programs to facilitate the implementation of the TSA before other reforms in the Gambia, as advised by the International Monetary Fund, IMF.
What they're trying to do is what we've done here, to consolidate all of government accounts into one single treasury account that will be managed by the Central Bank of the Gambia. The benefits, of course, are improvements in public financial management, liquidity management, and also the reduction in the cost of having to borrow when you can pull all your accounts and use the resources.
There are so many other reforms that are currently happening, including the expansion of the IFMIS to all government institutions, including subvented agencies, including the regional administration offices, including our embassies abroad. We are also implementing EFT, that's electronic funds transfer.
All over Africa, all over the world, you go to IMF, you go to World Bank, you go to African Development Bank, everybody agrees that TSA implementation in Nigeria has been a success.
With the signing of this Memorandum of Understanding, the Gambia will be able to leverage on the experience of Nigeria to build on recorded strengths while avoiding recorded mistakes.
And talking transportation, the Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, has assured that international flights will resume at the Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, Malam Aminu Kano International Airport, Kano, and the Port Harcourt International Airport before the end of the year. He said all hands are on deck to ensure all logistic and policy necessities are soon in place to address the difficulties encountered by international travelers ahead of impending Yuletide. The minister also revealed that Air France, KLM, and Lufthansa have received approval to resume operations. This follows the approval of their respective flight plans and schedules submitted to the ministry. Sirika emphasized the need for airlines operating in the country to employ international best practices in handling Nigerian passengers, as government will not tolerate any form of maltreatment of its citizens by any airline. Meanwhile, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, has stated that the federal and state governments have the capabilities to unlock enormous potentials through privatization. Director General of the SEC, Lamido Yuguda, stated this on Tuesday at a webinar organized by the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and he said the capital market's primary role in any economy is to facilitate capital formation. The SEC DG says privatization is an avenue for government to unlock economic potentials inherent in government-owned enterprises. He said beyond the funds to be generated, governments will enjoy cost of savings as there would be no further requirements to fund these entities post-privatization. The chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Kayode Fayemi, said the state governments have been constrained to increase spending in a bid to mitigate the effects of the pandemic, adding that if the private sector takes over in critical sectors, state governments can focus on education and health, among others. Fayemi assured that the forum will continue to partner with the NSE to bring in long-term financing for infrastructure development. The Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, BOFIA 2020, has made provisions for the federal government to operate a bridge bank fund to strengthen the struggling lenders backed to health. The amended bank laws signed by President Muhammadu Buhari shows that part of the BOFIA says the central bank will inject 10 billion naira, or an amount that still needs to be determined by its board, into the resolution fund every year. Each lender will make annual contribution equivalent to 10 basis points of their total assets, or a percentage that the CBN will have to approve. The new rule is separate to the Assets Management Corporation of Nigeria, AMCON, which was created to buy bad debts following a banking crisis in 2009. AMCON is expected to wind down by 2023. While Nigeria's biggest lenders have built strong buffers since the global financial crisis, some small and medium-sized banks have struggled to ward shock arising from the 2016 economic contraction and the coronavirus pandemic. To further break down this monumental piece of legislation and to understand how it will impact the financial sector, I have joining us virtually from Lagos, Johnson Chukwu. Johnson Chukwu is the Managing Director, Cowry Assets Limited, and Senior Member, Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Mr. Johnson, it's a pleasure to have you join us today on Business Express.
Thank you for having me.
into the law, the BOFIA, the president said the new legislation is expected to enhance soundness and resilience in the financial system. What's your take about the BOFIA in general?
Thank you once again. The new BOFIA is actually a significant improvement over the BOFIA 1991 Bank and Non-Financial Institutions Act. The simple reasons I said it's a material improvement is that we've seen the new act or the new law that is now in tandem with changes in the society. Among those things that have been addressed are the issues of bringing regulation to fintech, financial technologies. And as you know, the banking industry is today driven by technology, unlike what we used to have when Banks and Non-Financial Institutions Act of 1991 was enacted. Again, some of the challenges we have in the industry are going to be addressed by this act. One of which is the incidence of non-performing loans. You have just mentioned the issue of a resolution bank that will take over from where AMCON is going to stop in 2023. And we know that the industry, the banking industry, in anywhere in the world, will always have to do with instances where bank loans go bad, and there is always a bad bank that can acquire those loans. In some other instances, you have a credit market where the loan can be sold. But because we don't have a secondary credit market in the country, we need to deal with resolution of non-performing loans. And the bad bank or the resolution bank that the Act has made provision for will address that, because as you know, AMCON has a definite life. And it had actually been extended earlier, and it has to come to an end in 2023. The other things that are very interesting in the new Act that will also help to improve the economy in terms of availability of credit and quality of credit is the creation of a credit tribunal. Some of us have advocated consistently that we need to have a commercial courts that are focused on addressing commercial cases timeously. But with the credit bureau, which is a court with similar jurisdiction as the High Court, one is hoping that cases of bad debt, cases of default can easily be resolved quickly. Because as we know, in the financial system, we talk of time value of money. And if you have a commercial case that drags for 10 years, like I've experienced repeatedly in my business life, the value that you get, even if you get judgment, is no longer the same value as you would have gotten if that judgment had been given immediately the case was taken to court. So the credit tribunal, I believe, will keep at bay the high incidence of non-performing loans, as well as compel those who have become what we call in the banking industry, they are regular defaulters. They will find a way of, the law will find a way of taking care of them.
Okay, you talked about non-performing loans, but it's been about 29 years without operation, or without review or amendment. Do you think that these present changes will help in meeting that expectation of addressing the non-performing loans, as you said, and then encouraging lending, especially for MSMEs?
Okay, let me start from the issue of non-performing loans. We know that part of the challenges we had in 2008, 2008, 2009 was caused by a high incidence of non-performing loans, where the bank's balance sheets all collapsed because the customers who those loans were lent to could not pay. And one of the incentives to criminal acts is the knowledge of the feeling that you will not be caught, and even if you are caught, you will not be punished. Some of the reasons that have motivated those who have become frequent defaulters is that they know that they will find loopholes in the legal system, that other cases delayed unduly, or that judgments are never secured. So with this tribunal that they had been provided, this credit tribunal provided by the new act, it's expected that cases involving loan default, cases of credit dispute will be dispensed of timeously. And that way, those who have values, who are entitled to values, will receive their value. That will discourage those that are regular in defaulting, and the way the punishment needs to be meted out, it will be meted out. So it will serve as deterrent. So I think that will address that to some extent. Of course, there are several reasons why loans can go bad. the area we're dealing with now in this instance is where the default is a result of the character of the borrower. There are instances where you have macroeconomic environment that make it difficult for customers to pay back. You have instances where there is a natural calamity, or like we have recently where you have civil strife and riots where people's goods were either burnt, destroyed, or looted. That could lead to incidents of loan failure. But that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with those that have to do with character, where the borrower intentionally did not want to pay the loans. And I think this tribunal that has been created by this BOFIA 2020 will address that.
Okay. The BOFIA is also expected to support economic recovery. How do you see it helping Nigeria and other African countries to come out of the 2004 and 2008 financial crisis?
Okay, what I would say in that respect is that the provisions are such that one has further strengthened the hand of the central bank to resolve to ensure financial system stability. But beyond that, that provision of credit tribunal is supposed to have multiple purposes, one of which is that banks will be more comfortable to lend. One of the reasons why the banks find it difficult to lend is because they are not sure the customers will pay back. When that is strengthened, when we have a stronger credit control system, a credit enforcement system, the banks will open their vaults to customers because they are sure the monies, they are relatively sure the monies will come back. And that's one of the reasons why that will support economic recovery. Because for you to grow the economy, you need to push credit into the market. And those credit will come at relatively lower cost. And one of the costs of credit is the risk of default. So if you reduce the risk of default, the cost of credit will come down, and banks will lend at lower rates as well as lend to more people. And that will ensure that, one, we have high level of consumption because you have consumer credit, you have more access to capital for business development and startup business like this, small and medium scale enterprises.
Okay, we've had in some quarters situations where people are concerned about too much power to the central bank in terms of granting license to banks. What's your take about the power given to CBN in the Act?
Well, I know that has been a major issue among analysts and interested parties. The basic thing about powers is that we know that in as much as it's good that the central bank has powers to supervise and maintain financial system stability, there must also be checks and balances, because you might have a very decent central bank governor today, but one day you're going to have somebody who, if unchecked, could actually wreak havoc within the system, because overregulation will stifle innovation, will stifle creativity, and also curtail the industry's growth. So what people are complaining is that when you have so much powers vested with a particular entity as a supervisor of an industry, those powers, if they're without appropriate checks and balances, could be abused. And I think that's the concern with people, that what we need to do is to create a mechanism or restore the authority of the National Assembly as it relates to supervision and authority over the central bank. I think we should not allow laws that will exclude the authority of the legislator to superintend the affairs of any aspect of our national life.
All right, Mr. Chukwu, the Act is also expected to help regulate the activities of financial technology companies and ensure adequate sanctions for regulatory violations. How can that be possible, considering the growing wave in cyber crimes in the country?
Well, the first thing you have to look at is that the Act made provision for stiffer sanctions for anybody who is carrying on banking business without a banking license. As it stands today, technology has made it possible for people to carry on banking business without having a banking license. The Act also made provision that nobody should run a banking business without having physical presence in the country of your registration or in Nigeria. So financial technology companies in many instances have been carrying on banking businesses without having physical presence, either in any foreign country or even our local country. So, and the sanction is very stiff. It said you have to pay, first of all, you have to return all the deposits mobilized from customers. Two, you have to pay a fine of 20 million naira or a jail term of 10 years. And I think that, unlike the previous, the amended or the repealed act that made provision for only 2 million fine without any provision for jail time, I think that will serve as a major deterrent for anybody who wants to provide banking services like the fintech companies without having a banking license. The key thing is that the central, we need to find a way of bringing the creativity and innovation of the financial technology companies into the banking system without necessarily impeding on financial system stability.
Okay, just before I let you go, the Act has also made provisions to operate a bridge bank fund to strengthen struggling lenders' bank back to health. Can you share your thoughts with us about that?
Okay, you know what has been happening until now, until this act, is that the central bank acts as the lender of the last resort. So in many instances where banks are going through liquidity or solvency challenges and they are not candidates for liquidation, you find that the central bank will kick in and provide the bridging in terms of funding. So the bridge bank will now play that role. In any case, it simply means that any bank that has challenges will access funding from the bridge bank instead of going to the central bank. That will reduce the burden that the central bank is having in trying to fund not just the federal government, also fund the financial system. And again, because that fund is available, such banks are not going to default on the interbank borrowing, which could have domino effect on interbank lending as well as system stability. So you have, it's easier to ring-fence a weak financial institution and then have the bridge bank nurse them to life.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us about the BOFIA, Mr. Johnson Chukwu, all the way from Lagos. Thank you for your time with us today on Business Express.
My pleasure.
All right. Moving on, the Joint Ministerial Monitoring Committee of OPEC and its non-aligned members have emphasized the ongoing positive contributions of the Declaration of Cooperation in supporting a rebalancing of the global oil market currently facing the consequences of COVID-19. In a communique after its 24th meeting, the JMC affirmed support for the unanimous decision taken at the 10th OPEC and non-OPEC ministerial meeting on 12 April 2020 to adjust downwards overall crude oil production, and the unanimous decisions taken at the 179th meeting of the OPEC conference and the 11th OPEC and non-OPEC ministerial meeting on 6 June 2020. The committee reviewed the crude oil production data for October 2020 and welcomed the positive performance in the overall conformity level for participating OPEC and non-OPEC countries at 101%. OPEC Secretary General Mohamed Barkindo, highlighting the reintroduction of lockdown measures and resurgence of COVID-19, says it will continue to affect the rebalancing of the oil market. However, the announcement of various vaccines by different manufacturers offer hope. The committee noted that between May and October, participating OPEC and non-OPEC countries have contributed to reducing the global supply by approximately 1.6 billion barrels, including voluntary adjustments. Stocks advanced midway after 2 days of downward trade. The NSE All Share Index gained 1.68% this Wednesday to settle at 34,818.01 points. Market capitalization also wrapped up the session at 18.1 trillion naira. 661 million shares exchanged hands in 7,324 deals valued at 8.2 billion naira. Transcorp, GT Bank and Zenith Bank topped market activity for the day. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Business Express. Be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channel. You can also communicate with us on Twitter. The handle is @NTA News Now and the hashtag is BizX. Business Express returns Thursday at 9:30 a.m. I am Muplang Dakok.